I'm a very big believer in portfolio management because it's different. If I would have just that one baby, as you call it, that one project, I would think differently. But if I look at the whole portfolio, then you assess these projects in the context of that portfolio. And that portfolio, again, is not that for the sake of having a portfolio. You have that because you want to advance your strategy. You want to increase your enterprise agility. So again, this is how you assess these projects. But by the way, Philip, when you talk about that sports metaphor, imagine a ballerina. And a ballerina, she's training. So sometimes she, doesn't finish the pirouette. She falls or, has to interrupt. Would that be considered a failure? No, it's a training process. So I think that really in our mindset, what do we actually consider failure? That really matters. Because if I'm innovating, experimenting, I would not call it a failure. If I'm training, I would not consider it a failures as, during that training process.
Hi, welcome to Project Management Matters. This is a podcast about all things project management. We discuss projects, programs, portfolios, and everything in between, including PMOs. Today, I'm excited to have Lenka Pincot with me. She is the PMI Chief of Staff. Lenka, it's great to have you. Welcome on board. Great to see you. And I'm looking forward to having a great discussion.
Thank you, Philip. And happy to be here with you on this podcast as well.
Great. As we were getting started, we were reflecting on how quickly a year kind of passes by through the life of PMI, whether you are on the volunteer leadership side or the executive side. Certainly with you, I think you've been on the road quite a bit. How has travel been so far this year? Any exciting places you've been? Any major events that you've really enjoyed that you can share with us?
Well, yeah, so that's a great question. And I see that people are always watching us, and we like to post about the places where we go, because for us it's about community engagement and it's about connecting with people in all those different places, connecting with our partners and organizations. So I enjoy all of them. Asking me which one is my favorite, that's a very tricky question. I don't have favorites. I absolutely don't have favorites. No, but at PMI, we put a lot of effort into staying in touch with our community. So we also put a lot of effort in our events, trying to make them very intentional, always bring the latest, always bring great thought leaders and content, and always to connect and network and literally learn from each other. So I will not talk about my favorite, but I can talk about my latest, where we were in Africa, in Nigeria specifically, because that was a location of one of our board meetings, and we visited some of our partners, we visited some organizations. And again, for me, it's a great place to learn about complex projects, but also about projects that are executed in a changing and sometimes also challenging environment.
Indeed, I think that one of the exciting things about seeing Africa and the growth in project management and PMI is I remember back in my old, PMI board days, that was one of the target areas that we knew we wanted to grow, and there were so many, and it's great that it's finally coming to fruition, and the growth of the profession there is coming up very nicely. So that's always nice to see. One of the things that I've been interested about, and maybe you can share a little bit more, is that I believe you've got a project management background. So you're joining the PMI staff ranks from the profession. So I thought maybe it would be good to kind of get started over there, and you can tell us a little bit about your professional journey, how you came to project management. Was it accidental? And just kind of walk us through that journey.
Okay, Philip. So you know what? I will tell you how exactly that happened. Was it accidental? That's for people to say. But the first time where I actually heard the word project was when I was studying computer sciences at the Charles University. And a project was literally a name of one of the subjects that we had to do. The subject called a project was very feared by software developers because it was there for a purpose. It was there to put software developers together as a team. One of the conditions to create a project was that we had to leave the campus, find a real customer. So imagine all the anxiety. How do we talk to real people? Find a real customer, find a real business case or case, develop something for that customer so that they accept it, that they like it, and then presented it in front of the committee. So when we were working on our project, I was surrounded by a group of incredibly skilled software developers, and I was not one of them. I actually studied engineering, system engineering, which is something that I like to do. It's designing systems, looking for solutions, not necessarily coding. So everybody knew that I'm the weakling, but I was always good at organizing. So they nominated me as a person who will take charge of the team, make sure we meet all the deadlines, person who talks to the customer, and then person who prepares the presentation for that committee. And guess what? We passed with flying colors. Where everybody was looking at us like, wow, how did you do that? And I realized that, yes, we coded well. We had a good functioning software, but also it was that organization that we put in place. So this is my first, a little bit of learning about project management. And then later, I started to work as a consultant. And on my second project, which was a few months on the job, we were working for a quite significant client. But then, unfortunately, for whatever reasons, our senior project manager left the project. There was some personal reasons why he had to, make some decisions. And then we were two of us junior people on the project, again, a few months on the job. And suddenly we were like, oh, so what are we going to do now? So we were waiting for another senior leader to join us, but it took a few months. And we had to step up in that moment because the client was waiting for some results. And this is where I started to learn more seriously about project management because we needed project management skills to be able to deliver. So that was the moment when I was discovering and had so many aha moments. And I got intrigued by the project management discipline. So I stayed in consultancy for the next 10 years, but I had that ambition. I wanted to lead project myself, which I achieved that at a certain point of time. And even if it was not my job title ever, but I learned how to apply project management skills. What is it about? And it greatly benefited, I would say, every step of my career, frankly.
It's interesting that there's quite a bit of interchange between project management and consulting. I had a guest last podcast and we talked exactly about that they kind of feed each other, and some of the natural skills that are needed, especially on listening and so forth, are very much kind of the same type of skill sets. So was that when you first encountered PMI, or was that many years later?
That was many years later, but we can get to that as well. But you know what? Let me follow up on what you just said, and that is the link between consultancy and project management. So it might not necessarily be consultancy as a practice itself, but one thing that I learned, and it was for a great benefit throughout the later years, especially when I was leading transformations, was to acquire business acumen and to learn how to acquire that quickly. Because as a consultant, you are very frequently exposed to this situation. You get a new client, they hire you, you literally open the door and everybody expects you to know what is the organization about, what are the weaknesses and stuff like that. These are all skills that absolutely can be learned. We had our ways how to understand new industry very fast, how to understand new organization very fast. Sometimes literally you open the door, you walked in the building and you noticed little things. You saw how people interact with each other. You saw what's on the walls. You saw how people meet, how they discuss, body language, all of that. So this acquisition of business acumen is something that is important in consultancy, but also very critical for project professionals. And so just wanted to follow up on that. I agree with you. There are some intersections.
Indeed. And you were going to tell us a little bit about kind of when you
PMI.
became aware of PMI. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was, obviously being in Europe, of course, we heard about different subjects in the project management space, but as project management was not my job title per se, I felt quite good with my skills at that time. But then for personal reasons, we spent some time living in the United States. And when we moved there, I was looking around and I was thinking, like, what is the community that I can connect with? And this is how I learned about PMI. And I can tell you, I was just impressed So I started to volunteer with one of the chapters. It was PMI South Florida chapters. I still remember these moments. What we were doing, that we were working with high schools to teach high school children project management skills to help them get some job opportunities when they finish high school, but also to use these skills as I did when I was, studying at university, just to help you with whatever projects you have to deal with. And the impact that this chapter was creating for me was mind-blowing. So I did also some certifications. I have, I think, 5 of them right now. So that came with it, but that community connection, that volunteering, that is something that I never experienced before. And so then when I came back to my home country, which is the Czech Republic, I'm not kidding. My first question was, where is PMI here? And I came to the first meeting, and then I stayed with the chapter as long as I was living in the Czech Republic. You know that right now I live in France, but these years that I spent back in the Czech Republic, I started to volunteer for the chapter and later became a chapter president and connected with other chapter presidents in Europe. And just that power of the community, that was something that was really amazing.
Absolutely. It's always interesting to talk to people who have been involved in the profession across different countries and continents. Are there any takeaways in terms of your global work where you might see some similarities or differences in terms of how the profession is basically administered, or how people engage in project management, say in Europe versus the US or elsewhere?
Well, yeah, there are some, but I think that when you look at project management skills, what is needed, how is everything that we do at PMI, how it's helpful to them, I think it's always important to understand what is the place that they are coming from. What is the maturity of project management at that place? What are the challenges that organizations are facing in that place? So definitely based on that situation, based on the challenges, there are some learning products, there are some certifications which are incredibly helpful. For instance, right now, certifications that we have for artificial intelligence and project management, or sustainability and project management. But beyond that, there is that community. And that's the power, that's the amazing thing. Because let's say that you have some challenge, you need to prepare yourself for something, and then you find your peers and you can just talk about it, get advice, get some mentors, and this spirit, this is what I see around the world, regardless of the project management maturity and all of the other factors that I mentioned.
Yeah, and I think that your journey with going back home and immediately looking for the PMI chapter, so many of us have had that same type of experience, because we know that when you're going there, it's almost in a different way going home. Basically, you're going to that group of friends or whatever, professionals who share similar attitudes and the language for project management as well.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm like, like daring. I remember I came to the chapter meeting and I'm like, I'm just coming back from the United States, and with chapters, they do all of these things. Why are you not doing it? And this is how I became VP for programs, because the answer was, okay, do it.
Exactly. You joined the PMI on the staff organization fairly recently, although it's been a few years now, I think. Talk us through some of that. I'd love to hear how that came to be. And I'm sure a lot of people are curious, what does a PMI chief of staff do? So maybe you can reflect a little bit on some of the responsibilities that you have and some of the activities that you work on.
Yeah, so first, I think I need to clarify that I'm not a chief of staff. I am chief of staff to the CEO, which means that I'm heading the office of the CEO. And I'm just saying it because, chief of staff as a role, it can be chief of staff to different C-suite. But in case of chief of staff to the CEO, typically you have a team, it's office of the CEO. And these teams can be different organization by organization. So specifically at PMI, I have 4 teams in that group. So one of these teams is our Transformation Management Office, our Enterprise Program Management Office, then our thought leadership team. That's the team that is working on all the research and producing thought leadership reports for the community. And then the last team, it's a small team that essentially provides communication support for the CEO and for our board of directors.
what attracted you to kind of join PMI and kind of commit to a different part of the organization?
Well, that's a funny story. You know, in my heart, I'm a problem solver. So, when I was a chapter president, and I joined PMI as the chief of staff to the CEO basically 3 years ago. So 3 years before, I was working as a transformation leader in the banking industry and financial industry in Europe, because transformation, this is what I do for a living. And I was volunteering as a chapter president. And at that time, I was just seeing some needs for PMI to transform. That was my job, So then when PMI appointed a new CEO, Pierre Leman, who joined in September 2022, we were connected. We got connected. I think it was at that time by the PMI Europe team, because of that chapter presidency, we had the opportunity to talk. We shared our views on PMI. And then I started the recruitment process, which was very long. So many interviews, so many tests. It was very, very thorough process. And after all, I was recruited. So that's the story. The funny part is that because as chapter presidents, we met in Rome for one of our chapter presidents meeting. And, at that time we got a question, how can we improve PMI? And so we were working in groups, and we were supposed to record a video with our solution. And at that time, the group of chapter presidents I was working with, they asked me to be that person on the video. So I remember I was like, oh, we need to drive some transformation, so that was a funny part of it, that then after all, I had the opportunity to join PMI and contribute to what we are doing right now and to elevating the project profession.
I think it also involved in the agile space as well in terms of the PMI acquisition. So maybe you can share a little bit about that.
Oh yeah, so that's something that I'm really excited about. So at PMI we are growing by acquisitions at the same time as we are growing our membership base. So recently, one of our recent steps, and I'm trying to explain the word, was that we welcomed Agile Alliance into PMI's family. So Agile Alliance is now part of the PMI family, as we call it, and I was appointed as member of the board of directors of Agile Alliance, as a PMI representative on the board of directors. So I started to work with Agile Alliance very closely and digging a little bit deeper into the Agile space. And I mentioned that before I joined PMI, I worked as transformation leader. So I was actually working as Agile transformation leader. I was helping organizations to advance their enterprise agility. And so going back into that Agile space was very interesting. And we saw that there is some work to be done, mostly to expand the vision and perception of agility to go beyond agile or agility in software development towards full enterprise agility. So we started to work on that topic. And then in summer this year, so it was the end of July, at Agile 2025 conference, which is the annual gathering organized by Agile Alliance, we actually announced that we're going to work on the new manifesto for enterprise agility. And since that, this is what we're doing. So we're working on that new manifesto. We are engaging our community into that work. We are engaging senior leaders, thinkers, C-suite, CEOs, and just working on this so that we can initiate that shift of perception and essentially expand that vision for agility.
One of the great things about this move and having the topic of agile and project management kind of come together is they were kind of put at odds unnaturally. At least in my opinion, the two go together quite well. And I've seen a lot of kind of misconceptions around if you follow the traditional project management approach, then, or the PMI methodology, as some people kind of called it, inaccurately, in my opinion. I think that that was kind of an unnecessary kind of enmity in terms of the discipline and how it evolved. So it's good to see that we're beyond that and we're talking about how can we basically leverage all of these concepts and regardless of method in terms of helping organizations and helping people. So from my standpoint, I think it's just a natural step that made a lot of sense in terms of expanding the PMI family, as it were.
Absolutely, Philip. You are absolutely spot on. So, the Manifesto for Agile Software Development, or sometimes called as the original Agile Manifesto, that was formulated 25 years ago. So 25 years ago, I was that student of software engineering. Then I remember that we were learning different methods of software development. Iterative and incremental methods were one of them. And we were learning them not as one is better than the other. We were just learning them as these are the methods that you can apply. And we also know that the drive or one of the factors that led to the creation of that Manifesto for Agile Software Development was a stronger shift towards commercial software development. So there were some market drivers, some digital transformation that was happening that was driving the need to rethink the way software is developed. And then later this movement expanded in other parts of the organization. But along the way, the divide was created. I also believe the divide was a little bit artificial and it was fueled, unfortunately. And then the world evolved again. So right now we are going through another transformation. We have all the impact of AI. We have accelerated change. We have frequent disruptions happening. So the whole concept also needs to evolve. But from what we're seeing at PMI, when we look at our data, we see that what organizations truly need are integrated, flexible delivery models that help them to be agile on the enterprise level, regardless of the methods that you choose for your particular either project or problem or product, whatever that is. So we are actually seeing also on the data that it's important for project professionals to be fluent in the full continuum of all these practices, to be able to choose the best method approach for whatever you need to solve for.
The key is having that flexibility and being able to pivot in an agile way to address whatever the organization needs in terms of business or technology. What are some of the topics that you're engaged in with volunteer leaders, professionals? Is it primarily now AI, or is it a lot broader than that in terms of maybe some of the pain points that these practitioners are seeing and some of the challenges around the world?
And you mean as me as Lenka, or you mean as PMI?
Well, I mean, I'm talking about the practitioners that you're engaged with, what you're hearing from them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, as PMI, we work on this broader topic that we started to work on that ever since we released our new purpose, which is to maximize project success to elevate our work, which naturally led to the question, what is project success and how is project success elevating our world? So we worked on a first wave of research on project success. We released it in December 24. And very shortly after that, we summarized it in the broader vision for the profession and the call for action for project professionals that we call MORE, M-O-R-E. And then MORE is really there to help project professionals to understand how they can drive bigger value, how they can create more impact. And it's about increasing the maturity of the profession, basically elevating the profession. So then since that, first of all, we ran the second round of research. I can't share the insights yet. It will be shared at our global summit, which is in mid of November, so happening very soon. But we are also working on different resources. And to put it all together, we formulated or articulated what we called 8 content innovation platforms, which are topics that are expanding and elevating the profession in the service of more. So these are topics such as artificial intelligence, which is definitely changing the way we work, impacting the profession a lot, but also sustainability as one of the pressing challenges for organizations and leaders. We also work on topics such as PMOs. I know that's close to you. Social impact, giga projects, change management, product management, and agility.
I mean, I have to tell you that one of the exciting things about doing work in the Middle East is that we're basically involved in all of these topics almost at the same time, and you just kind of pivot from one to the other. And the amazing thing is that these different topics, there's a lot of interplay between them. You know, when you think of giga projects and their impact on the environment, adoption of technology and AI, and you can just go on and on. So I like the fact that these are kind of 8 themes that each of which is quite hefty and sizable, but there's quite a lot of integration between these different topics. Do you find that this has resonated with the membership and with the profession at large? Have you received any feedback yet on that?
So that's a very interesting question because we started our discussion talking about these events and connecting with the community. So one of our events that we do in each and every region where we connect with our community are called LIMS, Leadership Management Institute meetings. And then these are meetings for chapter leaders. And what we do that we are bringing all these new things, new insights, data points, content to chapter leaders, not only to help them understand where the project profession is going, but also to hear from them. So what is happening in your local community? How does it all connect together? So this year, we spent a lot of time on socializing MORE and asking for feedback from chapter leaders. So we were doing workshops with them. And these workshops were amazing because they were giving us a lot of feedback. And it even led to a creation of certain maturity model of project professionals or the profession that we then used as one part of something to look into when we were running that second wave of research. So this connection with the community, understanding how it resonates, is very important for us. Of course, through our community, we are also getting a lot of feedback on how other topics are resonating. And then what we are taking away from that we need to keep iterating how this is connected, how this is integrated, that it's not just like one topic there, but it's exactly as you said, on complex projects, all of this comes in play at certain point of time. And that's why we articulated these content innovation platforms to elevate the profession, to expand perspectives of professionals and help them understand what is the future of the profession, but also where exactly are you creating impact through your work.
And are you finding that perhaps the level of maturity, and I'm not sure if that's the right word, when it comes to these different topics, varies by maybe region or country or industry, or is this still kind of evolving as you learn more about these different areas?
Yeah, it's definitely evolving. The observation that I have that it really matters on what is your challenge, what is your particular environment, because some things might be important at some point of time. So that's why it's for us very important, sorry for repeating the word, to look at the profession holistically and produce these resources in a close connection with our community so that our community can use them at the time when they need them. But it's very interesting with learning, because with learning or with expanding your views, you typically, I don't know, I don't think that people do it just like, let me learn something. You learn something that you want to use. Right? So our job is to understand what is needed and produce these resources that when you need them, they are available, you can have access to them and use it for that moment.
Absolutely. I want to talk a little bit about PMI as an organization, one that has a sizable staff. Several weeks ago, I had the pleasure of having Brantley Underhill, who's the Chief Community Officer, on the podcast, and we reflected, Brantley and I go a long way. So we talked about kind of the good old days and reflected on what's happening. One of the things that PMI has really become quite the leader on is just the ways of working and kind of modeling behavior. I think that it's been a kind of a brave transition post-COVID in terms of shifting to a virtual space and virtual environment and so forth. And as you said, you live in France, Brantley lives in the US, and you have 700 members of staff and thousands of volunteers globally. Do you ever kind of shut off and just kind of like relax, or is it kind of 24/7 all the time in terms of emails and calls and so forth? How do you handle that?
Well, first thing I will probably I will probably need to say that we call ourselves employees. We don't call ourselves staff. I know that was a wording from the past, and our volunteers sometimes use that. So we made that shift in the wording, I believe, 3 years ago, because we really wanted to recognize all the work that our teams are doing. So we shifted there. But you're right. If you look at the size of the overall team that PMI has, it's massive. And you put together all of our employees and these thousands of volunteers. We have more than 15,000 volunteers, and the number keeps growing every month when we check this metric. So it's the team itself is massive. But we have a structure in place. So of course, we are also just human beings. We are absolutely empowered to manage our time, and then it's just your choice. So it's true that working in a fully remote environment is different than working in the office. We are also a global organization, which means the organization itself operates 24/7. And a lot of our volunteers, they prefer to work outside of their normal office hours, which is absolutely understandable. So we have to adjust to that. But then it's really about your time management and the way you approach it. So it's not that there will be like a phone ringing 24/7. That's not like that.
So talk a little bit about your experience having transitioned from working on projects outside of the PMI organization to being a member of PMI, especially engaging volunteers and working with them on projects and so forth. Is that really any different than working with employees in another organization where you might have some functional responsibility or some level of power that might be different when you're attempting to kind of corral volunteers to get things done?
That's a very interesting question. So, in my current role, we work with volunteers mostly as subject matter experts when we produce our leadership content. But when I think a few years back, when I was a chapter president, then we were working, as we were volunteers, working just with volunteers. And at that time, I was also like an organization leader in my daily job. So I had my teams, I had my direct reports, I had all of that. The difference in terms of organization, I would not see really many differences there. I think what really brings volunteers together is that passion. It's when you have projects that you run with volunteers, you really need to be sure that whatever you're doing makes sense, because you are using a very precious portion of their time. So I always try to be focused on providing efficient communication, providing efficiency of the process as well, because you don't have time. You don't have that extra time to spend time on just trying to understand what you're supposed to do. So if you have your time right now, this is now your 1 hour that you can dedicate to that cause, then that hour is better to be good spent. So that really taught me to be efficient in whatever we do so that we don't waste precious time of volunteers.
Great. I want to go back to the definition of success because I was reflecting on that a little bit and thinking, to some extent, we've always looked at that, not just in terms of the typical definition of a pure project management success, but I want to look at it from a different perspective, and that's failure. Do you think that organizations are comfortable with the concept of failure? So many discussions that we have in organizations is about maximizing success, avoiding failure, et cetera, et cetera. But the reality of the matter is not every project is going to be successful. Some are going to fail. So has there been any discussion around that in terms of not just the learnings that organizations can benefit from, but also in terms of coming to grips with the fact that we don't have to have 100% record. Even the most elite athletes do not have a perfect record. I saw some studies about tennis players who, some of the top tennis players in the world are at like 51% success rate in terms of the points that they score versus the points that are scored on them. I'd be interested in your perspective on this and whether this topic has come up at all.
Well, absolutely. And I think one of the issues may be the word that we are using, failure. It's the word, who wants to be a failure, right? If you put it this way. right? But I believe that also, or I guess that it's not that way that that people would be like, oh, I'm so happy when I fail and I want to fail. I think that the word is maybe like harder to work with. But the way I look at it is a little bit different than is it good to fail? Like the projects always happen in some context. Innovation. When you innovate, you want to achieve something. So obviously you need to experiment, you try things, and when they don't work, it's good because you know this is not the way. And when they work, it is good because this might be the way. And there may be many what we can call failures in during that process until you arrive to something that is the best solution. But when you're innovating, when you're experimenting, you probably don't call it a failure. It's just a natural part of the process. So I think that to overcome that negative notion of the failure is to think, what is actually the natural process that we're following? Where do we want to get? And then how do we deal with setbacks or learning moments during that process? You know, just to take that baggage of the world and put it away so that we can really focus on that end result. We can really focus on what we want to achieve with whatever we are doing. But I think when it comes to projects, there is also another very important dimension, and that is that, you know, organizations need to be able to kill projects that are not successful. They are just sinking costs, sinking time, sinking resources. We need to have processes in place, such as portfolio management, to recognize that and then make the decision. Is it make sense to give it more time, more, you know, more trials? You know, do we adjust the course? Because sometimes people think failure is when I need to change. No, I need to adjust. That's not a failure. Or we see this is really a dead end, so it's better to stop it, release those resources, financial releases, release these teams, people, human beings, and just focus on something where we see a better chance for success.
Yeah, I think that that's an interesting aspect of looking at things because if I may use that sports analogy, you know, if you're in a football game and, you know, there's a certain time limit, and at the end of that time limit, usually there's someone who wins the game, somebody who loses the game. You don't continue to play the game until you eventually attempt to change the score. So you learn from that experience and you move on to the next game. And I think that that's kind of the same idea to me, at least in terms of how we can think of these projects that may not have achieved the type of success that we wanted. Instead of sinking in more resources on them, definitely there's an opportunity for organizations to pivot, retool, do whatnot, and just move on. But it's difficult, I think, when you think of the project as your baby, you know, you want to just kind of make sure that it succeeds. And that's not necessarily the right approach when you look at it organizationally.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's why, for instance, I'm a very big believer in portfolio management because it's different. If I would have just that one baby, as you call it, that one project, I would think differently. But if I look at the whole portfolio, then you assess these projects in the context of that portfolio. And that portfolio, again, is not that for the sake of having a portfolio. You have that because you want to advance your strategy. You want to increase your enterprise agility. So again, this is how you assess these projects. But by the way, Philip, when you talk about that sports metaphor, imagine a ballerina. And a ballerina, you know, she's training. So sometimes she, you know, doesn't finish the pirouette. She falls or, you know, has to interrupt. Would that be considered a failure? No, it's a training process. So I think that really in our mindset, what do we actually consider failure? That really matters. Because if I'm innovating, experimenting, I would not call it a failure. If I'm training, I would not consider it a failures as, you know, during that training process. So.
Absolutely. And I think that I love that metaphor, and I love the thinking that there are certain projects that may be high stakes that require a certain degree of compliance or standardization where, especially where, you know, human lives are at stake, that you would have to treat very differently than experimenting with a proof of concept for a new software development project or something like that. And that's not to say that software development is not important, but it's just the difference in approach where you have a tried and true and tested framework, like building a building where, you know, you can't experiment with safety versus doing something else that does require innovation and creativity and so forth.
Yeah, I would say for high stake projects, make sure that you trained enough and that you
Exactly.
learned. Yeah.
Exactly. Um, Let me talk a little bit with you about the generational evolution of the profession. And I've used this kind of interesting example because it's always fascinating. We are working in a world where oftentimes our teams include not just two, sometimes three, four, even in some extreme examples, five generations, and that each generation comes to the table with its own sets of norms. Has that been something that you've noticed either personally on a professional level, or is that something that is being talked about in the profession at large?
Well, absolutely. We're always looking at younger professionals entering the profession, what are their needs. We're also looking what is the progression for more senior professionals, for instance, towards high stake projects and all of that. But I was just recently visiting an event, and you asked me about that project success or MORE definition, what is the reaction from the community? So what I noticed is that it's different for people and might be generational, but I don't think that it's generational. Like ultimately, it's maybe about experience and having the open mindset and how do we approach things. So sometimes when we are presenting new concepts, it makes us think, why should we believe that new concept? Why is that concept better what I was doing before? So people have more questions. When we have younger professionals, and this is what I just experienced very recently, they are entering the profession, they are looking at our latest data research direction, they are looking at the reframe definition of project success. What they keep telling me is that this is incredibly inspiring for them. Because if you're giving them that guidance, what everything they can achieve when they become part of the profession. And for me personally, this is incredibly encouraging. So when you work with people with open mindset and they see these opportunities, they come to you with a lot of additions to these concepts, validation, confirmation, but also they are expanding and making it better. So I appreciate that a lot. So for me personally, it's not about generation. It's really about that mindset, being open and having that ambition to contribute to the profession, improve the profession.
So, looking at your career journey and the accidental or non-accidental nature that got you into project management, if you were to reflect on it, what keeps you excited and passionate about project management, and what can you perhaps share with someone who's aspiring to be a project manager, whether that individual is young in terms of their career journey or looking at making a transition from a different career into project management?
You know what? Like, I do not manage projects myself anymore, so I know what I'm missing. What I'm missing is that moment when you deliver something, when you change something, when you achieve something. These are amazing moments, and the project management profession is exactly built for that. It's not a routine job. You work on different challenges. You get to learn so many new things. In my career, I had the opportunity to visit so many different industries, learn about their business models, work with so many different leaders. I always enjoyed so much site visits. I've been to a lot of factories, and for me, it's amazing. And then you can literally help them. You implement something, you improve something, you resolve some issue. This is what projects are bringing. This is what we call this to elevate our world, and that elevating our world part, this is what is highly motivating for me. This is what gives me energy. And then I'm, happy that now when I work for the Project Management Institute that is literally driving this transformation of the profession and elevation of the profession, that I can contribute to success of other project professionals through the work that we're doing.
Great. This is a wonderful answer. And I think it's very exciting times for project management as a profession and for PMI. And it's always great to see the growth and the passion and the excitement and frankly, the online dialogue about where the profession is headed. This has been a great discussion. I want to thank you for being part of this podcast episode and being brave enough to join me and explore these things. I appreciate it. Have a wonderful day and look forward to hopefully meeting in the future face to face.
I would love to. Thank you, Philip.
Thanks. Bye-bye, everybody. Appreciate it.